Hello, everybody. My name is Angad Bachra, and my project is Behind the Label, an assessment of chemical harm in personal care products. So here's what my presentation is going to cover. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the idea of dermal absorption, as well as what has chemical regulation looked like in the past. I'm then going to go over the data I collected in my project and then discuss some of the insights and findings from that data, and then go ahead and conclude with some key takeaways, what's at stake, and any recent developments. So why exactly did I choose this project? So a close friend of mine during grade school missed 3 consecutive days of school because of an allergic reaction. Now, this allergic reaction was caused by his shampoo. Now, he didn't even change the company. He just changed the type of shampoo to anti-dandruff version. And apparently, the reason he had his scalp elicited such an allergic reaction, it was to the methyl sulfates present in that shampoo. And so after hearing about this incident, my skepticism towards all these products that you apply to your skin, like just suddenly increased. And one instance that I looked into was my favorite chapstick, Burt's Bees. And their marketing is like always on the package, 100% natural. So like you subconsciously assume, hey, this is safe. But then I dug further and found out they're facing a lawsuit over having forever chemicals present in their product. And we're putting that directly on our face. So yeah, since then I started digging more and more. And yeah, that's really why I was motivated towards this specific subject. So let's go ahead and start things off with the introduction. Now, what is dermal absorption? Now, dermal absorption basically describes our skin absorbing things, or in other words, the entry point to our body through our skin. Now, our skin is our largest organ, and its important functions are basically to act as a protective barrier from the outside world and keep our inner organs safe. Now, chemicals or molecules, substances, they enter through our skin largely in 3 ways. One is transepidermal, which is basically describing these molecules are diffusing across various cell and epidermal tissue and eventually making its way all the way down to the bloodstream. The second one is transcellular. Now, the molecules are actually quite too big to actually go easily through the cell membranes. So instead, they travel through the intercellular gaps and will make their way down eventually to the bloodstream. Now, the third one is transapendigeal. Basically, it's where these molecules or chemicals, they travel down the sweat glands, so this wiggly line over here, as well as hair follicles. If you can see, there's a dotted pattern. It protrudes all the way down across this dermis layer. So by going through these things, it's kind of like a water slide directly into the bloodstream. So that's the third way. And let's go ahead talk about the regulation in the United States versus the European Union in terms of chemicals. Now, in the cosmetic industry alone, as of 2019, the European Union has banned over 1,300 chemicals versus just 11 in the US. All right, that is a very huge disparity. And I have this table that also has other instances. So the EU banned products containing phthalates in 1998, basically a harmful substance that is a pharmaceutical preservative. Uh, and now the US only decided to ban this harmful substance a decade later. Then another instance, the EU banned the usage of PBDE in 2004, which is basically these aggressive chemicals that act as fire retardants that are often put in plastics. But the US, not only did they not stop or like outright ban PBDEs, but they halted production of them in 2006. And Walmart banned the sale of water bottles, or not water bottles, just plastic bottles in 2003, whereas it only took 5 years for the US to realize they should ban it too. So I found it quite surprising that even Walmart had better incentive and sense of safety than our country. Moving on to the data I collected for this project. So the method I went through, so I indexed the ingredient list of 50 different products across the following categories. Now, all these categories are basically personal care products that you would apply to your skin. So we had shampoos, sunscreens, moisturizers, deodorant, soap, body wash, and cosmetics. And these items were basically based on popularity as well as the availability to me. I frequented Walmart, I frequented Safeway, and I also collected certain personal care products from my own house to go ahead and contribute to this sample. Now, in order to assess my concern of specific chemicals, I use this website called the Environmental Working Group. Basically, they have their own sort of index of each chemical where they rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, and they have a widespread variety of sources such as corporate data, government sheets, as well as CDC documents. And they basically use all these factors and determine their concern regarding many different things, like all these types of uh, toxicity, such as ecotoxicity, neurotoxicity. They have carcinogenicity, endocrine disruption, irritation, and how allergic the substance is. And yeah, that's basically how I based off the ratings of each different chemical. So the chemicals that were from 7 to 10, I put as chemicals of concern because those are high hazard as indicated by the EWG. And I went ahead and dived further on them in my paper. So here are three of them that I dove quite in depth in my paper after seeing and sort of distinguishing these chemicals from the crowd. So the first one is methyl, or I prefer to call it MI, and it had 12 occurrences in my 50 group sample. The EWG score was 7, and it was found in shampoo, deodorant, and body wash. Next, we have propylparaben with 4 occurrences, rating of 9, and it's present in moisturizer as well as cosmetics. And finally, one of the worst ones, uh, it's a PFAS type of PFAS, and it occurred only once in the sample, and its environmental group rating was 10. So it's definitely not something you want entering your body, and it was present in one cosmetic product. So the trends I observed was that most toxic products include the Revlon eyeliner, the L'Oreal mascara, the Lubriderm moisturizer, and the CeraVe cream. I'd also want to add the e.l.f. Camo Concealer, as that is what had the PFAS. And I also saw through my data collection, there were so many alternative names used, like even for like simple things such as vitamin E. They had this very long word, or there's another chemical of concern, uh, methylamphetamine propanol, also called liliol, to mimic the scent of lily of the flower leaf or lily of the valley scent. And the most abundant chemical of concern was MI. So let's go ahead and discuss these findings. So these are the chemical of concerns. Above you see their chemical formula. So MI is a common industrial biocide, and it acts corrosive upon contact, especially in the nasal pathway. But in vitro experiments have demonstrated estrogenic activity. And this is also similar in propylparaben, which is a pharmaceutical preservative, and it mimics estrogen and poses a huge risk in endocrine disruption and reproductive harm. Essentially, by acting as a hormone, estrogen, and binding to those cell receptors, it's gonna not only just mess up the endocrine system, which is your whole body's regulation of hormones, but it's also got a lot to do with reproductive harm. And PFAS is a synthetically fluorinated hydrocarbon. If you take a look at the chemical formula here, you see all these fluorine atoms. So with a very intense synthetic process, only do these get added. And this is associated with neurotoxicity, cancer, and dysfunctional liver cells and poor immunity. And uh, I just found it very interesting that compared to like the molecules we would study in like biology, where you see a long line with like hydrogen atoms on opposite sides, instead you see all these fluorine atoms over here. You can just like sort of intuitively feel that it's a very synthetic or artificial substance. So possible limitations in my study, um, obviously could have been implicit selection bias, as I didn't keep in mind to take things from every different shelf possible. And at times I went for like the more name brand uh, rather than maybe like the in-house brand at the grocery store. And the sample size, having a higher sample size would have been a more representative sample of the total population of all these products, and also a lack of apparatus, which is really just a lack of funding. There was no actual chemical analysis performed, and it was just more of like compiling a list of all the chemicals from the labels. But with help like a machine, I specifically looked into this because it would be super helpful if I got my hands on it. It's called a liquid chromatography mass spectrometry machine, which basically the first part, the liquid chromatography, you get the substance, say it's like a moisturizer, you put it on this special sort of paper, and the paper separates this mixture into its different parts by basically density using gravity as it's angled. And the mass spectrometry part, you take each individual part and you put it in this machine, and this machine bombards that sample with electrons, and that sample itself emits an electromagnetic radiation that is picked up by the machine, and it gives you actually the concentration of that specific chemical within that substance. So that would have been really helpful so I could actually determine, well, is this like lethal or like a concerning amount of this substance in this product? But yeah, now to conclude, now in our current world, there are substances that are super synthetic everywhere. We need to take better precaution around this because in the end, if we can't rely on the government, we can at least rely on ourselves to be aware of what we're putting not just in our bodies, but even just on our bodies. And demographics play a huge role in this, as those who are predisposed to conditions like contact dermatitis, they'll have a very hard time coping with all these various different chemicals present in nearly every single product, as well as pregnant women are also at high risk for adverse risks. So we went over two of our chemicals of concern act like estrogen. So not only are they going to throw their endocrine system on haywire, it's actually going to be really bad for the baby because uh, a fetus that's in the placenta, there's no way for it to actually defend itself against those chemicals because the baby's absorbing nutrition constantly from the placenta. So those chemicals can actually accumulate inside the child. That has horrible implications towards later in life. Now, regulation in such chemicals is crucial as consumers can't live in fear when they use, like, when they're just in the shower using shampoo. They can't have that fear that, oh my God, I'm putting so many toxins in my body. But a glimmer of hope does exist, as last October, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill banning propylparaben as well as several carcinogenic food dyes in this state. This is huge because, well, no one has done this before. And by California taking incentive, this is actually going to pave the way for better regulation of these chemicals. And with that, I want to thank you guys for listening to my presentation.